Hello. Welcome to the project, Freedom and AI.
If you found your way to this content via Google or some other search engine, artificial intelligence played a role, like in our everyday lives. In this episode, we will speak about AI and data.
Social media collect a huge amount of data and create a huge databases from a huge amount of people. And then they create a small algorithm, small and big and different kinds of algorithms, and try to test those algorithms on those huge amount of data. So basically, they create your digital print, as they call it. Like, they collect every kind of data on you, and then they're trying to pair those informations and trying to give something that you trying to give the information for something that you maybe like or want, and you didn't even write about it.
AI affects our privacy, and actually people say that our privacy is most impacted by the current developments of AI. And this is because AI systems feed on large amounts of data, including our personal sensitive information. Put differently, we can say that data is the fuel used for the development and training of artificial intelligence. Nowadays, we're seeing more and more arguments being raised on the transparency of the data collection process. We are also seeing, measures being introduced for individuals to control, protect, and even withdraw their data.
From freedom of expression perspective, and from the perspective of human rights, the usage of data which people make available about themselves online is really the basis of a business model which digital companies use for their functioning, right? So when you as a user go online and use certain products, social media or search engine, they are really not free. You pay for usage of these technologies with your data, because the companies that are making these products available to you harvest your data, they profile you, and then they sell this data other companies for the purposes of advertising. So online, individuals are really a product that the companies are later selling. And of course, people are willing to do this because they want to use those technologies and they want to use social media platform and they want to engage with others online, but they often don't realize the price they pay for this. And the price is really the privacy and freedom of expression.
If you look at the system, it basically needs user data on the one hand, and the user data is what is motivating this huge data collection effort all over the internet. The amount of data that is collected is actually insane. On average, 117 gigabytes of data are generated and stored per user per year. If you think about the number of users in the world, this number is scary.
I also do not feel comfortable saying I know what's happening to my data. I try whenever I go to a website to turn off cookies, but it's not possible to turn everything off. Sometimes I don't have time to read through pages and pages. Sometimes the websites make it very hard for you to turn off cookies, so that it's not even simply the matter of a click or something. You really have to go into your settings and turn things around. Every website does it differently. Every website tracks different things. So I think we're even very far from making it easy for the user to understand what data is being tracked.
From my perspective, the big problem is the fact that they do not implement privacy by design and by default. Because if we implement correctly privacy by design and by default in any app, in any software, the user will not be so shocked to find out that their data is being spread to other entities in the group I have to admit, I read a part of the privacy policies of the sites I use. But it's like this. I do not read it word by word, but I look at it to see it. If it's something that it's like 13 pages, I will not use that site. So for me, the way they show me respect as an end user is the way the privacy policy is designed. If it's clean, if it's easy to read, then I do know that this is important for the commerciant. So this is, and it means that my dignity and my rights are important for him.
As an individual, really cannot do a lot about it. Mostly you go to some page, web page, for example, you want to use some product, and you would get a huge list of terms and conditions, and the options are, okay, accept it and use it, or go away and find some other solutions. So you really don't have any option to choose what you want to use and what you don't want to use.
I conducted a research for my university, and I analyzed my personal data that was stored on my social media accounts, and I analyzed Google, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And the most striking issues that I found were, for example, on Google, when I saw that the Google Voice software was activated without me recognizing, knowing that it was on, and at some point it just started recording moments of my life, and I saw the recording. They were kept in my personal data that Google had about me. And it was that speech-to-text recognition, automated recognition software that tried to identify some patterns in my speech, in my talking patterns. So, for example, it was worrying and striking. It was one of the Christmas celebration with my family. It was not just me talking, it was the privacy of my family involved. And I felt that it was too much, and that data should have been private and not have been accessed by Google.
Sometimes the problem is not what data is being shared. Sometimes it's simply that you actually have very few companies who are collecting data massively. They don't need to share it with anyone else. The problem is that they have this data. And they have so much of this data that it creates a power asymmetry, really. They know everything about you, and you do not know anything about them.
The important question, who actually owns the algorithm? They're mostly teams that are trying to develop some algorithms, and developing algorithm means you need to decide how it would look like, that kind of neural network, and then to train it on a huge amount of data. And who owns that data? So if you are using data which belongs to all of us, and then you create something, is that algorithm fully yours? And whose responsibility is if that algorithm works in one way or the other?
In theory, especially within the EU, with the data protection laws that we have, we should have control over our data. We should know who it's shared with and how it's being used. But in reality, what we find is that often that is not the case. And we find this in many places. I think social media is a good example that a lot of people are aware of, where everything from our face data, so that's a form of biometric data potentially that's in our photos online, can be scraped and taken by companies that we've never even heard of.
Platforms such as Google and Facebook are data-driven business models, which are relying increasingly on data of the users to make profit. They say that don't sell that data to third parties, but in fact, they actually use ad tech system. So basically, the agencies, the advertisement technology ecosystem uses these platforms and offering them money to gain access to online space, which is directed to some users. And although Facebook and Google don't sell basically data to those agencies or third parties, they are giving their access to the agencies, to the third parties, to engage with the best potential users that are interested in their posts, in their subjects. So that, I think, it's very problematic from the standpoint of the privacy of the data of the citizens, of the users.
In the recent years, in order to protect privacy, many tech companies, but also global initiatives on AI governance have explicitly referred to the principle by design concept, which basically aims to incorporate privacy standards as an integral part of AI development and AI use. In the European Union, according to the GDPR, for instance, the General Data Protection Regulation, data subjects have to be informed why their personal data is being collected by a particular organization or entity. This, in other words, means that they need to be aware of the purpose of data collection. But given that there are various types of data that are being collected, for instance, how much time we spend reading a particular article on the internet, or the purchases that we make online, and if we consider the economic value of data for organizations and companies, which they use for optimization of goods and services, it is very difficult for users to know the ultimate aim of data collection.
The more that people are educated about the topic, the more they are able to exercise their own choice and to decide what they want to do on an informed basis. Generally speaking, although there is a degree of surveillance, one can choose to opt out of it, particularly within the EU, and where companies are subject to a piece of law called the General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR. And so the more people understand their rights, the better they are able to exercise those rights. And at the same time, it's important to remain vigilant that those rights are not infringed.
GDPR is basically a protection of set of rules that are intended to protect the users, the citizens of the European Union, and to provide certain rights to users regarding their data, regarding the protection of the data, and to set legal framework and obligations of media outlets, of companies, basically everybody that is handling any type of sensitive data.
Under the General Data Protection Regulation, there are things like what we call data subject access requests, which allow people to request from a company information about them, the data that's being held on them. And we have freedom of information requests, and lots of civil society organizations across Europe doing loads of work to help kind of empower people and help people take back control of their data. And of course, people can make small changes like switching to more privacy-friendly services.
Like Facebook's free, right? Google's free. You can go and use Signal for you instead of WhatsApp, but are you going to pay for it? I mean, how do you want Signal to make money? How are they going to deliver more and more services? How are they going to keep paying for their hosting? And you have to look at a company and say, well, okay, what if we all just paid $20 a month to be on Facebook? Unfortunately, I don't think that works. So Facebook was set up to be able to brilliantly harvest your data and use it to sell to advertisers and to be able to bespoke their advertising offerings based on deep levels of personalization and understanding. That's the business that they are. Everything else is just to support that. So Facebook can't change their model overnight. Facebook probably can't change their model. BP is trying to change their model. It's really hard to do. So that's where we need these new companies to take their place. But how are we going to pay for them? What's the playoff? What are we willing to do to make it possible so that the payment isn't just from the behavioral data that's being collected and analyzed and used to serve back up to us and get us to buy more or vote for somebody or do something?
It's important to be very mindful of our online behavior and how we interact on social media platforms and to try to make it more personalized in the way in which we will try to get our privacy respected and our fundamental rights safeguarded online.
In the next episode, we will speak about AI and user behavior. In the meantime, check our website, www.freedomanai.com.